Okay, I'm going to get this started. So my name is Miriam. I'm one of the co-founders together with Peggy. Peggy is online as well with us of Beyond Concussion. We started about 5 years ago in response to the journey that we went through with taking care of our children. So I have a son, he's now 23, and about when he was almost 15, he crashed on the skateboard and got post-concussion syndrome. And the same for Peggy's daughter, Ariana. She got post-concussion syndrome after a cheerleading accident. So we decided that it was beneficial for us and for others to connect and to provide resources and help and support groups so that we could together learn about how to get through this life journey that's changed, right? So I'd like to introduce David. I'm very happy that you are here, David. I'm so excited. We've been talking for a while, and it's been wonderful just setting this up with you. You're so easy to work with, and so I'm going to pass it on to you.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for all that you and Peggy do. I can say without question that had it not been for peer support, I would probably not be alive today. I'll get into that shortly, but I can say with absolute certainty that the work that your organization is doing is improving lives and saving lives. I want to offer a couple of qualifiers. As a brain injury survivor, it's right now 3 p.m. local time here in the Eastern United States, and my sharpest time of day is pretty much any time before noontime. I play my A game up until noontime, my B game up until 2. Anything after 2 o'clock, it can be kind of hit or miss. Can you guys all hear me okay, as well as the audio okay?
Yes.
Thumbs up. Good. And the other piece is I've got a little bit of a heavy heart today. My wife was in for surgery a few weeks ago, and she's back to the docs today. We checked out for some stuff that isn't part of today's dialogue, so I'm a little bit on the distracted side. I would be be there with her at the doctors today, but fate saw fit that I be part of today's get together. So I'm probably playing my C- game today, but compared to where I came from, it's a beautiful thing. What I do, a couple of qualifiers. I'm not a medical professional. I'm a brain injury survivor. So what I bring to the table, what I bring to what we're doing here is my own personal firsthand experience. I don't speak for any member of the medical community, and the opinions that I express are things that I've kind of learned along the way. And because of the fact that I lost a lot of my verbal and emotional filter with my accident, I'm better now. But I tend to be pretty opinionated in a heartfelt way, more so than I was before my injury. These days, nobody really has to say, "Hey, David, what do you mean?" Because I'm going to tell you. The very first time I had the opportunity, and it was actually here in New Hampshire, to keynote at a Brain Injury Association annual conference. My mom and dad were in the front row. My wife, Sarah, was in the front row. I hadn't slept much the night before. I was absolutely loaded with fear. I was very new to my advocacy journey. And I uttered a couple of 4-letter words from the podium. And there's been for a long time a disconnect between what I think and what I say. I periodically still have trouble with word finding issues. And it wasn't my intent to utter profanity that day, but I can happily say that I haven't had that happen in a number of years. What I do and what I don't want to accomplish today, I'm not really going to talk a lot about my advocacy journey, because that doesn't really benefit anybody here. You know, I can talk about some of the milestones, some of the things that I've done, some of the accomplishments, but you know, my goal today is to be in front of you and sit transparently and share about a very personal part of my life as a fellow brain injury survivor. And I'm going to share some of the things that have worked very well for me, and some of the things that have not worked. And Miriam and I had the opportunity to share before you all became part of the today's event and kind of breaking things down into smaller increments. I'm going to talk a little bit about my life before my brain injury, what happened, and things very, very specific, compensatory strategies and lifestyle changes that have enabled me to have, I've got a really, really good life today. And if you had told me early on, after my injury, that I would ever even be capable of saying that, I would have looked at you with a very confused look on my face. It was unfathomable. My injury was on November 11th, 2010. I'm in the 11-year club. Prior to my injury, I had just celebrated 1 year married to my wife Sarah. Her and I remain best friends, and she has said many times over the course of our journey that had we not had a decade of time together prior to my injury, our relationship would not have lasted through the first few tough years. And for me, she's my best friend, and for me to hear that can still bring me to tears. But we were all in a very good place in our lives in November of 2010 until we weren't. I went out on those who know me, I'm an endurance cyclist. I'm now in the over 60 club, so I've ratcheted it down to 1 hour cycling a day. At the time I was pushing out 90 minutes to 2 hours every day on my bike, having a blast. And I went out for a typical ride on a November day, quite content with my life, and never foresaw the fact that by the time the sun set, I would be rushed by ambulance to the nearest trauma center. It wasn't really what I expected as part of my life's plan. Although if I take a look over the last 10 or 11 years, part of me feels that I'm living a life today that I'm supposed to be living. And I think this is part of just the master plan. I just needed to suit up and show up and be willing to use my experience to help humanity. But I went out for a ride, and I was struck by a 16-year-old driver, and newly licensed. I think the young man had probably shaved 2 or 3 times in his life. The police estimate that he was doing 30 to 40 miles an hour when he broadsided me. He didn't hit the brake. I went right through his windshield and was ultimately catapulted about 50 feet down Main Street. My wife spent the next 3 or 4 days with tweezers pulling glass shards out of my head. And it was, what's that line? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was horrible. And today, because of our time limitations, it's going to be the absolutely abbreviated version because we're going to have some group sharing afterwards. And I don't want to, I can kill an hour easily. They rushed me down to the trauma center, and my journey as a brain injury survivor began that day. I've had numerous issues with executive function challenges where my mind says something is okay to do, and in reality it isn't. And that started from day one. They wanted to keep me in the hospital for observation. And I remember saying to the staffers in the trauma center, hospitals are for the sick and the infirm, that I am neither, I'm going home. And I checked myself out against medical advice. I found out after the fact that our local community had dispatched a police officer across state lines. I went down to Massachusetts. I was injured here in New Hampshire. Based on the condition of the car, there was a very real probability that I was going to die that day. And they wanted to have somebody there in the event that I did pass away. It's not really a shocker that in addition to my traumatic brain injury, I also was catapulted into the abysmally tough world of PTSD, something that I still live with today. So I got home that night and didn't realize what I had. My body was beaten up really badly. I broke a leg, tore a bunch of ligaments, had lacerations and bruises that lasted for weeks. And I want to talk a little bit about I'm going to jump forward through a few pivotal events during that first year. I started almost from the get-go with the PTSD tormenting me. 3, 4, 5 nights a week, I'd get up at my witching hour was 11:30 p.m. until 12:30 a.m., screaming in bed, covered in sweat. And again, I don't know who here has had experience with PTSD, but I try to tone that down because triggers are triggers, and I don't want to be the cause for anybody to be uncomfortable. But I experienced a lot of horrific things in my sleep, and it was just abysmal walking around for day after day, week after week, month after month with excessive sleep debt layered on top of my brain injury symptoms. I knew early on that something had changed, and I was unable to put a finger on what had changed. But I knew that there was a dramatic shift in my sense of me. I felt different, acted different. My personality, unbeknownst to me, changed very dramatically. People started to back out of my life. And I couldn't see the apple on my own head. I was the last to know. I would be prone to outbursts, profanity. I mentioned it earlier, it started to become commonplace. And I just wanted to feel normal again. I wanted to be back to my pre-injury David. And I saw a neurologist early on after my injury. And the day after my accident, he gave me a clean bill of health and said, "You dodged a bullet. You didn't have a concussion." I passed one of the quick Montreal cognitive tests. And he high-fived me and said, you're doing fine. A couple of months after that accident, I abruptly lost the ability to read. And they, at some point in time in the future, postulated that it was more than likely brain damage at a cellular level that was beginning to turn into scar tissue. So I had a very delayed onset of symptoms. 3 or 4 months after my injury, I lost the ability to speak. And oh my God, I speak for a living, and it had nothing to do with advocacy. I was running a very successful web design and marketing firm, interfacing with clients. My memory became about as predictable as a bowl of Rice Krispies and milk. It was absolutely useless. I'd call back clients. In one conversation I recall, clearly was calling back a client, and my client saying, "Thanks for calling me back, but I left you the message 3 months ago." And I lost the ability to discern the passage of linear time. I would say to my wife, "Remember last week when," and fill in the blank with an event, and she'd say, "That was 4 months ago." And I was just lost. I saw the pain in Sarah's face. I saw the exhaustion in Sarah's face. I heard it in her voice. I have 4 sons. 3 of my 4 sons walked out of my life early in that first window of time. There were rumors that were circulating that I was faking my brain injury for attention. And because I think sometimes it's a curse, I don't have a scar. I had trouble clutching my left side for the first year after my injury. And I can still be plagued with aphasia, and I developed a stammer and a stutter. But if you look at me, you want to send a brain injury survivor into the land of discomfort and say, "You look normal." Yeah, but try and live for a day in here and tell me how normal it is. So my children, 3 of my 4 sons walked out of my life. To this day, with the exception of one making a temporary comeback, they're still gone. And part of it is they were unable to reconcile Dad 2.0 with Dad 1.0. And it's taken me a long time and a lot of therapy to be in this moment, to be okay with it. something I never thought possible. So the first year was defined by exhaustion, by that loss of self, the ambiguous grief, loss of income, being self-employed, which was ultimately a good thing because I would have been fired. I struggled, but my income went down by over 90%. My wife and I relied heavily on credit cards just to keep the mortgage paid. And I got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. Absolute overwhelming despair. And I had daily thoughts of suicide. I can't get up and face another freaking day trying to live the life that I have. And a couple of things happened that saved my life. The first was connecting with a peer-to-peer brain injury support group, and I'll get into that in a minute. And the other piece that happened, I started to see a mental health professional that actually had a clue, and she specialized in brain injury survivors and in grief counseling. And I tell her regularly that she saved my life. And I remember during one of the sessions telling her, I may not make it through the week. And I had it planned. I had a bridge abutment picked out. I have a ton of life insurance. And I had a very calculated plan for ending my life. And I thought about Sarah. And I thought, what will it be like for her? And I knew that it was already exceptionally difficult for her. And in my mind, I thought, you know what? She'll go through the courtesy 5 years of mourning me, and she'll move on. You know, she was at the time of my injury. At that time, she was 40 and I was 50. And you know, my wife is beautiful. She's intelligent. She has the kindest heart of anybody that I think I've ever met. And she's a catch. And I would further slip into her memory as the guy that she was married to that had the horrible accident that killed himself. And that was where I figured my life would go. And I know that you guys get it, you know. And again, I'm a little repetitive, but it was the worst anguish and torment. If I can take every bad day that I had before my injury and lump them all together, that's only a fraction of the degree of agony that it was like during that first year. And there were no breaks. It's unrelenting. Every day I would get up and jump back into that same existence. I'd open my eyes and go, oh shit, here we go again. Mm-hmm. And that's the bottom. I'm going to talk a little bit about today and life today, and then get into some of the things that have helped me. My life today is awesome. It's awesome. I don't think I've ever been happier in my life. I live with a brain injury, but it does not define every waking moment. And there are actually, during the first year, 2, 3, maybe 4, we talked about brain injury at the Grant household every day. You know, it was part of the narrative. Oh my God, it's my brain injury. You know, the lack of the filter, and it became the elephant in the living room that you couldn't ignore. And these days, we rarely talk about it. We've both found, and I use the term we, nobody recovers alone. We've both found a way to coexist, having brain injury be part of the narrative of our lives together. But where it used to be right in front of us, it's now over here on the side. It's always there, but it's not prime fodder for daily conversation. And in fact, we've had a heck of a lot of laughs, usually over things that I say, but sometimes over things that I do, because speech challenges still dog me. And I am notorious for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. And we both get a good laugh out of it. And thank God for Sarah's sense of humor. We used to attend rock concerts and music festivals and outdoor fairs and events with a lot of people and a lot of chaos. That doesn't work with both PTSD and the overstimulation that comes with brain injury. And life today is more apt to be spent. David and Sue, I know you guys spend a lot of time outside. I love your pictures. Oh my God. If sometime if Sarah and I ever get to the UK, we're going to look you guys up. Spending time in nature has been part of the narrative of Sarah and the life that we live today. We do a lot of hiking, a lot of nature walks.
Your photos are fab.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Sue.
Your photos are fab.
Thank you. I'm a card-carrying member these days of the American Horticultural Society, and we take horticultural field trips looking for gardens, and it's like a $50 yearly membership, and you can get into these wonderful gardens for free. I've gotten into outdoor gardening and landscaping. My major in college, my degree is actually in horticulture, and I've developed a passion for just working out in the yard. And I found a lot of things that I derive great joy from. And I've got a really, really nice sense of inner peace that I never would have thought possible. And again, I need to add the qualifier. I still have a ton of challenges. Neuro fatigue can still rear its head every day and just kick the legs right off from under me. I've mentioned the speech challenges that still dog me. I'm better at relying on my calendar, but I missed 2 client calls in the last 8 days because I forgot to read my calendar in the morning. And I don't condone mistruths, but I live a professional life as well. And the overwhelming majority of my clients have no idea that I have a brain injury, and I keep it that way. So I become adept at covering my tracks for missing an occasional call. But I've also learned that a lot of how I live my life, I've got to make changes on the fly. And Miriam, we talked about it before today's meeting. My next level of compensatory strategy is for important appointments to not only set my calendar, but do a phone reminder, because my phone is always with me. And I know how I'm wired. My phone will set off an alarm and I'll be like, oh my God, what's that for? And then look at my calendar. So a lot of it's bobbing and weaving. So life today is pretty remarkable. I'm pretty comfortable. The PTSD nightmares have gone from 3 or 4 a week. I said to Sarah today, it's been 2 weeks since I've had a bad night. Those are record-breaking spells. So, I take a lot of gratitude in what may sound small, but is really big. What I want to do is I want to jump into some of the very specific things that I've done that have helped me. Just things that I wish I'd known then that I know now. The first thing that I mistakenly thought was that the way things were early on were the way things were going to stay forever. Wrong. I didn't understand about neuroplasticity. I didn't realize the brain injury. I had these well-intentioned people that would say things like, brain injury recovery is lifelong. And my ego would say, yeah, maybe for you, but I want to be done by 8. And then they'd say things like, time is your friend. And like, I'm type A, that's nice, but like, I want it yesterday. But I found that time is my friend. And that the reality that I lived in years 1 and 2 and 3 wasn't the reality that I lived in year 5. And it's certainly not the reality, technically I'm in year 12 now. So time really is, for brain injury survivors, time is our friend. Brain injury recovery is indeed lifelong. I had milestones. I'm at least in part a writer. And a few of you guys know that. My work's been out there. That's a lifelong dream that was realized only because of my injury. I learned to read again at 3 years. I got back to work again full-time at 7 years. Again, it sounds like a long time, but these things happened in my life. So the first piece is do not fear time. Time is something to be embraced. And if things are particularly terrible today, I remind myself and those close to me that if it's a tough day, every other tough day has passed. So that's piece number 1. The other piece that I want to share, and I need to tread very carefully here and restate that I am a layperson, but my experience with the medical community has been subpar. I was told after my injury that I had no concussion, that I was fine. that same neurologist that I saw, that I went back to when I lost the ability to read, said, David, you do indeed have a concussion. And at that time, I was still grasping the I want to be who I used to be concept. And I said, Dr. Silva, when will I be normal? 6 to 9 months. And like that didn't bother me because it was a date I could circle on a calendar. And I had another incident that I didn't share. It's in my first book, Metamorphosis. I had a 2-hour blackout at 6 months after my injury. I went out for a 30-mile bike ride and thought I just left the house and realized that I'd lost 2 hours with no memory at all. And they called it I forget the medical term, but basically it's like not having film in a camera. And I went back to the same neurologist, and he's like, "Well, yeah, we're going to up your timeline to getting better. You'll be 100%, but it's going to be 5 years." And that was the last time I saw that neurologist. My stepson had trouble with chronic migraines and had spectacular results with a local doctor who claimed to be adept at treating traumatic brain injury. So 3 or 4 years after my injury, I was still in that desperation place. And we decided to jump back into the ring again and try to see another doctor to see if I could get some relief. And that doctor said, "You don't have a brain injury at all. You have sleep apnea. And it's by not breathing in your sleep that's causing the panic events. And once we address your apnea, the nightmares will go away." And he said, what I find to be some of the cruelest words of all, he said, "I can fix you." And at the time I was desperate. And I did 4 or 5 months of the sleep apnea, the CPAP machine, only to wake up 3 or 4 nights out of the PTSD nightmares with the device strapped to my face, and thus ended that experiment. At a year into my new journey, I went to see a neuropsychologist. I sat for 2 consecutive terms as a board member for the Brain Injury Association of New Hampshire, something that was an immensely rewarding experience. And this is a retired board member who was also presented as an expert. And my intent when I scheduled my neuropsych testing was to put a linear push pin in my recovery, so that I would have a starting point that I could then refer back to and say, okay, let's do this every year so that I can gauge my growth. And I went in for my neuropsych testing at 12 or 13 months post-injury. And we went back. It was grueling. I don't know if anybody here has done neuropsych as a brain injury survivor, but it was exhausting. And we went back to what I've called over the years the great reveal. And I always had Sarah by my side because, again, think about a thing, a mason jar full of fireflies. That's my brain. It's just scattered. And I needed her as an advocate for me to remember things that I would forget. And he said, well, you, in essence, flunked your neuropsych testing. Your verbal recall is at the bottom 5% based on your age and gender, and your ability to learn new tasks is at the bottom 5% based on your age and gender. And he kind of waggled his finger and he said, do not try to learn anything new because you're incapable of learning anything new. And he said, you were clearly very intelligent before your injury, and most brain injury survivors see a pretty significant ding in their IQ. But you'll probably end up average, so you'll have a reasonably okay life. And don't forget to pay the receptionist on the way out. And I left deflated, devastated, and angry. And after about 2 weeks, I went, you know what? Again, candor, screw him. And if I fast forward to today, and I can bore you guys with geek talk, but a big part of what I do professionally is I develop internet marketing campaigns for clients based on defining user demographics for specific search criteria, and then develop advertising campaigns that reach into very specific marketplaces. I help my clients literally make millions of dollars. Nothing like this I ever did before my injury. My job today, I'm still self-employed, but I've clearly learned an entirely new monetizable skill set. So he was wrong. So the next takeaway, and I know I'm going a little longer than I wanted to, was there are a lot of good medical professionals, but don't believe everything you're told. I went back into therapy about 2 years ago because the PTSD was becoming abysmally tough to live with. And I actually found a PTSD doc who was worth his weight in gold. I started something called EMDR, and it's been a game changer for me. So just because somebody in a white coat says it, I told my wife, she said, "What are you going to talk about?" And I said, "Well, I need to be careful." And she said, "Well, you may want to call it self-advocacy, but I'm calling it for what it is. Trust your gut." The next piece that's helped me immensely is surrounding myself with other brain injury survivors. I felt very alone after my injury and started attending a local face-to-face support group, and immediately felt like I was putting on a comfortable pair of gloves. These people understood me at a level that I didn't understand myself. Changed the game entirely. That sense of being alone disappeared almost entirely because of being in the company of other brain injury survivors. And the benefits of myriad. It validates them up that I'm not alone. I've developed friendships that I have today that transcend anything I ever had before my injury. And there's this big giant knowledge pool of shared experience with other survivors that, you know, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, and it's helped to improve the quality of my life. One of the other pieces, and I've only got a couple left, and then I'll wind down. I find in my life it's really important to give back to humanity. My wife and I have been very richly blessed, and it's not materialistic type blessings or financial blessings. We live good lives. We have honorable people around us. We've got cherished friendships. We've got, for the family that made the decision to stick with us, we've got good relationships with our family. We've got an open and loving home. And I think it was Maya Angelou who said, shame on he who walks through life with a baseball catcher's mitt in both hands. Just for us, we found a joy in giving back to humanity. And a big part of my life involves helping others that live with traumatic brain injury. Everything that I do for my brain injury advocacy work these days is donated time because it's the right thing to do. You know, when I first started walking this path, brain injury old timers showed me that it could be done, and I feel a sense of obligation to them. But also, I've got this amazing life, and there's this vast underserved population trying to find their way. And my goal is to try and make a difference in the world. So I found that, like one of my favorite prayers is the prayer of St. Francis. And in that prayer, he says, it's in giving that we receive. I don't give with the expectation of getting anything back, but I give, and it's because of that. I think blessings have flowed into our lives. And then the last one, and then we can open it up for any discussion that that comes to pass. I mentioned earlier about just getting into 2 layers of alarms on my for appointments, and a lot of what I do these days is I look for areas where I can continuously improve the quality of my life. And I found a way to coexist relatively happily with my brain injury. But again, the PTSD still dogs me. And I have been getting, the last year or so, I've gotten very much into living mindfully, adopting mindfulness as a way of life. Just being clear and present in the moment with what's happening right in front of me. And that alone has been a game changer in my day-to-day life. And one of my next pieces that I write is going to get into the new type of meditation. I get into virtual reality meditation with a VR headset as a way to try and find some relief from my PTSD. I've got an app that I use called Trip, and I started it maybe 2 months ago. And I'm learning things like the box breath and breathing and things that are alien to me. but they're doing the same thing here. They're improving the quality of my life. And when my life quality gets better, a rising tide lifts all ships. So it helps those around me. So I think that's probably about as much as I want to touch on today. I want to thank everybody for being here today. You know, events like this are just a blast. Like this is, you know, this is like the color in the coloring book of life. You know, it makes things worthwhile. If you watch The Wizard of Oz and Dorothy goes from the black and white into the land of color. And, you know, when I get together with other survivors or people who get it, family members or members of the medical community, like we step into this colorful, unexpected world, and it's wonderful. So thank you all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And so I heard the first tip for you is, for everyone, is not to fear time, to make time your friend in, you know, with the neuroplasticity and continuing to learn, continuing to heal, and help your own brain heal itself. And then the second tip I heard you mention was, do not believe everything the doctors tell you. And I love that one, because you do believe in yourself. You know, you have to believe in yourself and your capabilities. And if we're going back to the neuroplasticity, absolutely, you can, you know, do more than what the doctors might tell you. Your third tip I heard was help others and advocate for TBI awareness, and teach others about what it's like to have TBI. And then lastly, you said, look for areas where you can improve your life. For instance, with mindfulness, with meditation. I think all four of those tips are very helpful. I know for my son, that will be something that, you know, he can take away. And you all do as well. So if you have any questions, feel free.
Can I jump again into the neuroplasticity? I got back on a bike 2 months after my injury, and it took me about a year to get out of my neighborhood. PTSD just would not let me go to an area where there was a lot of traffic. And for the first 6 or 7 years, I biked 90 minutes plus every day, hardcore cardio. And I was very blessed, because even though I would get the mental exhaustion at 2 o'clock, I didn't get the physical exhaustion. So it kept me busy and kept me from wallowing, and you get the endorphin piece. And I also knew that my recovery was exceeding what a lot of the medical professionals had shared early on. We had a board member for the Brain Injury Association of New Hampshire that came to us from Walter Reed Medical Center. She's a brilliant young doctor, cutting edge, and she was the type of physician that got it. And we had many conversations, and she explained to me why exercise helps with neuroplasticity. And I need, again, to qualify that not everybody is capable of doing what I'm capable of doing. And we all do the best we can, but exercising for some folks can just be outdoors, you know, walking for a little while. But there's science behind it. And there's a material in the human body called brain-derived neurotropic factor, BDNF. And BDNF stimulates neurogenesis, the creation of new neurons. And the scientific data over the last few years has shown that a high level of this particular material increases neurogenesis by 300%. So what I didn't realize is that the very same activity that ultimately almost killed me was aiding in my recovery by creating an internal state that was very conducive to healing. So there is science behind that. And I just wanted to put that out there as well.